The US Capitol and speak with Michael Purcell. He's an adjunct professor at George Washington University. Thank you so much for being with us. As we're hearing there from Andy Eurasian, trust on both sides for the Ukrainians and the Russians is not high. How likely is it that this is going to hold?
Well, I think unlikely, and I would even maybe beg the premise of your question. I don't know that we actually have an agreement. We've seen a flurry of statements today that establish certain conditions, preconditions, if you will, that Russia would like to see. The U.S. has put out some information, which is certainly helpful. But for those of us that are looking towards the details and the technical details, as well as the verification measures, I think we're still quite a ways from seeing that. So considering the extent of destruction on both sides here, particularly on Ukraine's, over the course of a decade or so of conflict, it seems like we're getting ahead of ourselves and having any kind of optimism about a ceasefire in the near future.
And Michael, I just want to ask you about a line we've just seen come in on our wires from Russian Foreign Minister Lavrov, saying that Russia and the US are discussing removing barriers to joint projects, including energy, space and the Arctic. What do you make of those comments from the Russian Foreign Minister when ostensibly what's meant to be being discussed here is ending the war in Ukraine?
Well, I have no great respect in many ways for the Russian foreign policy team, but you have to give them credit for the length of service. Lavrov's been around in that seat for over 2 decades now. He's very good at what he does, and what he's doing is elevating the discussion from one between Russia and Ukraine, moderated by the United States, to one between Russia and the United States about issues of mutual interest. The Arctic is clearly one that involves not just the U.S., but certainly the other Arctic nations, and certainly is a global desire to see something good happen there again. But this is sort of part of the Russian strategy, right? To make themselves appear like a great power, to be treated like a great power, to continue to emphasize their discussions with the U.S. As opposed to Ukraine, and then simultaneously detract from Ukraine's credibility and legitimacy in the international arena. It's a very specific tactic, and I think there's probably a lot of receptiveness on the U.S. side, which is a team that's been in place for roughly 2 months and is just getting its feet underneath it. I'm quite skeptical, quite frankly, of anything that comes out of Secretary Lavrov's office at the moment.
And you mentioned, Michael, that it's questionable as to whether this can be defined as a deal just yet. Already we've seen Zelensky saying on the day of the deal, Russia adding sort of conditions and caveats that it wants in order for this ceasefire to come into play, and also saying that both sides are saying that it's up to Washington to uphold it. Do you think Washington is capable of doing that?
Well, capable and willing is 2 different issues, right? I think at the moment, we're all collectively naive about what it would take to cease this conflict. The former Soviet space has numerous what are often called frozen conflicts, but essentially, a legacy of the collapse of the Soviet Union. And you can add this conflict to the list. Several of those are still ongoing or in various states of sort of degradation. But I think what's important to understand here is that what Russia is effectively asking for in terms of these preconditions to a maritime ceasefire or a ceasefire against energy infrastructure is a fundamental reversal of the EU strategy thus far, which is to impose sanctions and pain on the Russian economy. These are significant asks that they're going for, and they require cooperation with the European Union, certainly, to be effective, just like it was required to impose these sanctions to begin with. So there's a tremendous amount of work to be done here. There is a complete lack of trust between Russia and Ukraine for obvious reasons. So I just think skepticism and patience regarding details is where we should be at right now.
Michael Purcell, adjunct professor at George Washington University, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.